So for those of you that are a bit more familiar with my channel, you will know that it is mostly luxury and designer content oriented, and that is by no means by design. I'm interested in quite a few things aside from just the fashion, you know, makeup and travel, and it just so emerged over the ensuing months and I guess years now that luxury content seemed to have done way better, at least for my personal case, than any other types of content that I was doing. So I just stuck with it, and I'm by no means complaining about this at all, because I love doing luxury videos for you guys. I love interacting with the luxury community. I find it such a great and uplifting community. As someone who creates content and in a way, I guess, promotes a certain lifestyle or a certain product, as a result, I'm also a consumer with this caliber of product that I am showing you guys. Having then heard the recent news around price increases of big fashion houses, namely Chanel and Louis Vuitton. It's mostly targeted at Chanel as opposed to necessarily Louis Vuitton. I mean, people are annoyed at Louis Vuitton anyway, especially because a lot of their bags aren't leather, they're canvas, so raising price on canvas, also controversial, but I see a lot of the anger directed towards Chanel, which I find particularly interesting, actually. I did a lot of research and watched a lot of videos, read a few articles, and I wanted to share with you my perspective, a different perspective as well, perhaps, to the ones that you've heard. I would urge you, though, to please keep an open mind up front and to share your thoughts once you've heard the bulk of this video. I don't know how long it's going to be. I'm in a very chatty mood, as you can tell. So let's get started into this whole price increase debate. And if you don't know what has been going on, or you just want a quick reminder, so basically Chanel, amongst other fashion houses, but namely Chanel, I want to say, and it will be the focus of this video. So mid-May, Chanel raised their prices, and they didn't do it in the form of a big upfront announcement. They started off, at least from what I remember, being someone who window shops quite often, which in itself is a problem. I remember going on their website, and they usually, I'm from the UK, so the European website, not sure if it was the same for others, but when you go on their website, they usually have all the handbags or accessories, depending on what you're looking at, and they have the price in pound sterling on the page. But this occasion, in mid-May time, they did not. It was price on request. And that, to a lot of people, really got like red flags going, because they were thinking, actually, why would they suddenly change all their prices to price on request if something isn't going to be going on in the background, i.e. a price increase? And, you know, as a preface to this, Chanel is by no means a stranger to having price increases. It's very common knowledge that they, amongst other fashion houses, Hermes, Louis Vuitton, etc., they all have annual or even biannual price increases. So with the fact that it's being COVID and then their page suddenly having price on request, I think people put two and two together, and that something is coming at a time when no one can go out and buy anything because all non-essential shops and things were closed, and Chanel doesn't have an online presence, and so there wasn't even an opportunity for people to be warned of a price increase. This was all done in silence. And so then actually what ended up happening, I think must have happened actually for Europe first, and then for the US, it came out that the prices had significantly increased, which I will put on screen, or I'll link it below in the description. They're all from the Purse blog, and they're a really good website for general news around pricing or reviews and things as well. Would recommend. So this is all credit to them. It mostly affects their bag range. They did say, I think, that it affects some small leather goods as well, and no doubt across the board there'll be small price tweaks, I'm sure. But there was basically differences on the classics, from a small price increase of 2.5%, which I think is probably normal year on year that they increase anyway, to a whopping 25% increase. As a couple of examples, I will read some prices to you from my phone. items that it affects, they're the classic ones. So you got the classic flap, the boy bag, the Gabrielle, Chanel 19 reissue. There may be some outliers, but those are the big ones. And so actually I have two of the bags in question. So I have the Chanel boy bag. This is a very old Chanel boy bag, actually. This is 4 years old, almost 5 years old. Wow, time really flies, doesn't it? And this is in the new medium. For reference, back in the day, I bought this for £2,700. Nowadays, I want to say that's like, add another 1,000 to it, but let's have a look. So the boy bag, the new medium size, so this is all pricing in euros. The old price was €4,980. So that's probably what, like £4,000? £4,000, geez. Maybe a bit over. And the new price is, okay, so there is no price increase on the Chanel boy bag for the new medium, but the old medium has increased by 4.9%. The small boy bag, 4.3%. So actually new medium has stayed constant. Oh, there you go. The one and only, if I look at it, the one and only bag actually that hasn't changed in price. But of course it's still whopping actually when I consider, when I bought it, it's like a £2,000 increase, isn't it, almost? And then I also have a Chanel Mini, which actually is the most startling price increase of them all, if I can remember correctly. Now, I have the beautiful little iridescent rectangle Mini in the classic style, and I, again, was fortunate enough to get this for £1,980, I think, 3 years ago. So, one of the only bags, I think, that you can ever get anymore at Chanel that's under £2,000, it seems, because actually now, the Mini in rectangular, the old price was €3,050. So, what, £2,500? And the new price is €3,500. So that is a whopping 14.8% price increase. The square, actually, just looking at this, is even more astounding in terms of the percentage increase. The Mini Classic Flap in square retailed previously at €2,680 and increased to €3,350. So that's a 25% increase in price. So that's just the high level of it. And again, I'll put all the details below so you can see how it affects the other prices of items. While this was all happening silently, a week or so later, after it caused a big stir, obviously in the media, Chanel actually released a press statement. They said the price increase was due to a number of reasons. So the first being price harmonization. I think that was the key point, that they were going to harmonize the prices across the world, and that it had nothing actually to do with COVID. It was part of then the next reason, their, Chanel's strategy longer term. I think it was also alluded in their statement that they are raising the prices also to combat the price of raw materials. I guess with that being said, they evaluated their strategy. They probably brought forward whatever price increases that they were going to have anyway this year, and just, to stay afloat as a business in general during this time, since they have no online presence compared to the likes of, Dior, Louis Vuitton, etc. I don't think the majority of people really took that statement on face value, because there was a lot of murmurings and assumptions that actually Chanel was aware of doing this in a pandemic was going to be perceived as distasteful, but they were doing it anyway because actually what they were trying to do is close the gap potentially with fashion houses like Hermes. Hermes is extremely coveted. It's probably the highest tier of designer bag that people go for when they think of Holy Grail. Chanel being almost secondary to that, especially the more affluent. I feel like Birkins and Kellys are very much a bigger status symbol, and they're also incredibly hard to get for that reason, which elevates their branding, and Hermes has done a cracking job at their marketing at that. And so I guess for that reason, they're able to charge a very premium price. But I guess what people are saying is that Chanel is actually using COVID as an opportunity to gain a new audience, gain a new positioning with regard to the pricing gap of Hermes and Chanel, and make it harder to get. And there's also murmurings, of course, that with the price increase, not only are they looking to close that Hermes gap, but they're also looking to recoup a lot of losses, which understandably are probably happening right now because they have no online presence. I don't even think that the SAs would be able to sell during this time, to my knowledge. They might now, at the time of releasing this video, be slowly accepting more orders, but actually they had to recoup 2-3 months of losses. So from that perspective, people are very much of the position that I guess Chanel is being a bit greedy, distasteful. People are understandably angry about the fact that they're now having to work a little bit harder or to spend that much more for quality, which doesn't necessarily on their bags go up either. With all of that information said, I wanted to share my thoughts and perspectives on actually what I think. I'm going to start actually with my response to people's grievances around people's understandable anger and people wanting to boycott Chanel. And from the outset, actually, as objective as possible, it does look like, and excuse my French, a dick move. During a pandemic where people are dying, people are, struggling to buy things in general, that you would just then up the price even more. It just seems like a move which is kicking people while they're down. Then if I even inject my personal perspective, so my more subjective perspective, yeah, I'm annoyed. Of course I am, because that means I'm just going to have to spend a little bit more on stuff that I could have bought for a lot less a month ago. As a summary, I agree that it's not a great move for Chanel. I'm personally not thrilled at it. If you were to ask me, would you rather have the price increase or not? Of course I'm going to say not, right? But what I don't necessarily agree with is the scale of outrage. I'm not exactly thrilled about it, but I'm not upset over it, and I'm not angry about it. It probably seems like a sweeping assumption at this stage, but from what I'm seeing online, people are genuinely really pissed about this. They are literally up in arms. Some of them, I've seen the comments. People are getting really emotive over a bag that isn't in their collection yet. No one's talking about the bags that they already have. People are talking about the hypothetical of they want to buy a bag. And I understand, as a working woman, as someone who also has to save for their bags, I don't just click my fingers and bags emerge, especially not Chanel bags, right? They're upwards of £3,000. For some now, it's going to be £5,000. It's the equivalent of a car, depending on what type of car. The price increase is by no means a diddy one. It's big, it has real lifestyle repercussions. But at the same time, putting things into real perspective, during a pandemic, to have such anger towards a non-essential, literally luxury item is probably unfounded, and that anger could be redirected elsewhere. And it seems obvious, but when in a community like ours that revolves around luxury items, we derive a lot of enjoyment and pleasure out of buying these things, and we like it because it represents something. It represents hard work for a lot of people, unless you're of the super rich caliber, which good for you. When I buy a Chanel bag, I usually have a memory attached to it or a milestone attached to it. When I look at the bigger picture and what's really important to me, although it may not seem like it on camera, those are my family, my friends, the roof over my head, the food on my table, especially during a pandemic. Luxury should be the last thing that takes your anger or attention away from putting the food on your table, And although I don't agree at all with Chanel's decision to do a price increase during this delicate time, I feel like people would still react. Just 2020 as a whole, right? It's just COVID. Even if we were to have it in December, I still think people would be angry. Everyone knows that Chanel is no stranger to price increases, but it just so happens this year it's just like written off, so any price increase is gonna be perceived in a negative way. So in that sense, you can be angry about the timing of it, but it's not an essential item. Bags will not feed you. I mean, I know it's leather, but you shouldn't be eating it. Plus, even if they were to raise the price later down the line, the price increases are a part of life. That's actually my second point. Inflation, nothing new. It happens in our daily life. The loaf of bread that was in the 90s, I'm sure was like 10p. Now it's like £2-3 for the same thing. And especially for Chanel, the reason I think why it's so prestigious is because it raises its prices so frequently that, it makes it a good investment. I was saying earlier, actually, with this boy bag, I bought it £2,700 4 years ago. It's now £4,000, over £4,000. It's a great investment in that sense. And it would only be a great investment if they continually raise their prices. If it was harder to buy, the price of something yesterday is always going to be worth more than something today or tomorrow. That's just how it is. And so to protest against a price increase, I mean, you'd have to protest against every single price increase in life. The loaf of bread, the price of electricity, everything. Yeah, people might not be protesting the price increase necessarily, they're protesting the timing of it. But even those two things, even if Chanel was to price increase any point else this year or even next year, I mean, they're saying the effects of COVID will be for the next decade or something. So someone would have something to say about the price increase related to COVID anyway, even if it wasn't. And, you know, even with the pandemic element and the price increase, wouldn't you be more focused on putting the food on the table? Wouldn't you be more outraged if toilet paper, for example, skyrocketed in price? People might now take this opportunity to be like, well, Mel, you're one to talk. You've got so many bags or this, that, the other. Yes, I do. But I also have ambitions to buy other things in life. If genuinely, like, Chanel decides to raise prices further to 10 grand one day, am I really going to spend 10 grand when I could put it towards a mortgage or towards, you know, other things like cars? But if someone wants to do that, well entitled to, but it's a personal choice on what you want to spend your money on. And I only see outrage if it was something that my life depended on and I couldn't get it. And I hope that's largely what people are saying. I hope that people just, you know, up in arms for a moment and then going on to other things. It's not like they're going to, as a result of this public outrage, reduce their prices. It's never going to work like that, because otherwise all the bags that we have that are Chanel or any luxury fashion house, if they were to do the same thing and suddenly reduce their price due to public pressure, they would lose value and probably integrity in a way than just sticking to their guns and going with it. Anyway, I sort of went on a tangent there, but my point is Chanel's a non-essential item. It's a luxury at heart, so don't take it to heart. If your biggest problem is a Chanel bag pricing at the moment, than putting food on your table, I would really reevaluate your life priorities. And I'm actually a bit impressed, actually, if your big priority at the moment is a Chanel bag, because it clearly means you're happy, healthy, and all that. You've got your other stuff in order, hopefully. And also, inflation is nothing new. It's part of life. And then, I guess, segueing into my next point, Chanel is a business first. I think as a consumer, we tend to just think of it as like a nice-to-have little item, but the entity that made this bag and makes Chanel what Chanel is today is a business. There's strategies, there's pricing, supply chain, you know, operations, all of that sort of stuff. That's not free. And like earlier, the inference of Chanel doesn't have online presence. They barely made any sales, I presume. They're a business. They've got to recoup their losses somehow, I imagine. And yeah, it's not right that they recoup it from us, I guess, potential buyers, but it's not like you bought the bag and they're now saying, you've got to pay £300 more. It's not like it's already in your possession. It was never in your possession to start with. It's your personal choice if you want to continue to support them, that that's what they're doing to recoup losses, or indeed to factor in the price of raw materials going up. Obviously, if their prices increase and their quality decreases, then there's more of an argument to say, actually, Chanel, you're just being greedy, etc., because comparatively against Hermes, their quality has, from what I understand, remained very constant to justify their huge price. But now with the narrowing of the gap, like, Chanel's a business, so they're entitled to do what they want because it's their business, and we decide as consumers whether we want to buy into it or not. But, you know, hopefully their quality continues to stay the same or improve. But we can't blame a business for doing what is good for their business, because if they didn't and they can't recoup their losses and they collapse, say, then actually every bag that we've said has been good for investment, so the boy bag or the mini, they end up being worthless. That would be the biggest shame of all, right? Because Chanel, like I said earlier, is a holy grail brand for a lot of us out there. And imagine if everything that we bought today just suddenly crashed in value. Or imagine the flip side, actually. If Chanel was suddenly so accessible that everybody and their mothers and their grandpas and their dogs had it, then the price would go down and everything that we've bought would be worth less. So, you know, the aura of Chanel having being so prestigious and hard to attain, it's only going to continue with price increases because that's what they need to do to maintain that status. That's actually why we feel so viscerally, I guess many people feel angry or emotional towards Chanel. And I think in that way, that's a job well done, actually, for their marketing, that they make us feel this way, because that comes at a cost. It's their high marketing prices, their websites, and the in-store experience as well, to make it such that we want to keep buying and to justify their high prices. But price increases are a part of life, they're a part of their strategy, and if it wasn't there, I don't think we'd be as enamoured with the brand, actually. And then a final thought to share before I wrap up this video and do the what's next part is actually, with people's anger or unfavourable general opinions about Chanel and this price increase, it actually made me think about Chanel's public image as a whole, and obviously the prestige that they have cultivated and the heritage that they have. I wanted just to add a little tidbit of information, which I think you might find interesting if you didn't know already, is that if you are only outraged at Chanel now, and now just thinking about it, I'm going to regret saying this, but were you aware that Chanel has a dark past? And what I mean by that is that Coco Chanel herself, had history with Nazi Germany, and thus Hitler. Okay, now this is going to sound like a very random thing, sound completely unrelated, but what I mean to say with that is that actually, if you're only outraged about Chanel now, doing something that is part of their business plan, part of life, inflation, part of life, then actually many brands, not just Chanel, Volkswagen has a history of this particular regime, but also other brands I'm sure were involved in other things, albeit the marketing is, I guess, covered up a lot. But actually, Chanel had a lot of funding, I think, or from the regime, and also did a bit of reconnaissance work or like spy work. And so therefore, if you are outraged at just the price increase, I would also evaluate the fact that Chanel's done other things in the past that we're not talking about or have forgiven, or, I don't know, people weren't aware of. And so I only found out very recently, actually. I found a video online and it just talks about it. But actually, when you think about it that way, and you think about your outrage, and you think about the other brands that may also have a past like this, I just wanted to put that out there, just in case people were unaware, and not to dig out people's past and things. People can change, etc. But maybe that is a point where you should think, actually, knowing that, is the price increase maybe the least of my worries. So my battery just died, and it's probably a good thing at that, a good signal that I should stop rambling and talking. And I will close out this video by talking about so where do we go from here? The what's next. If you can put it in more black and white terms, there are two options that I mentioned even earlier. And the first option, which I guess is the option that people are mainly taking, just stop supporting Chanel. And I guess with that option, people are pivoting more towards designer brands or fashion houses that create good quality items for a fairer price. And an example of this, and I have some eye candy, would be bags like the Saint Laurent Lulu, or just Saint Laurent in general, or other brands like Dior, I think people are buying more into. And this particular bag is so much cheaper, even compared to the Chanel Mini, which is way smaller, right? Less leather, etc. This is $1,365 retail, and sometimes has discounts, like I bought mine. And this bag, for example, does not discount. This one is, $3,000 now? So yeah, you get more bang for your money with other brands and potentially better quality. So a lot of people are pivoting towards that, or wanting to support the likes of Hermes, which now the gap is closing in. It's only like a £900 difference, I think, from the Kelly or the Birkin, from what I remember. People are now saying, well, you know what, if I'm going to save that much money, I may as well get a Birkin. And that's within your gift to do that, if that's what you want to do and you already like Hermes. But what I would say in doing that element is, don't do it, I guess, in spite of Chanel, because then actually they get what they want. And what this means is, so first of all, if you actually like Chanel, but you just, out of anger, you're buying towards the other brands, then actually it's not really an authentic want for these items. You're actually wasting more money in the long term because you don't actually want these items. You just think it's the more sensible thing to do at this stage, and you might end up regretting them in the future, which would be a real shame because these items are very expensive. But also, they get what they want because, and I do think in a way they do want a different audience, that of an exclusive elite who doesn't, they're indifferent towards price increases. They can just keep buying them. It's a status symbol as well at the end of the day, isn't it? Having a Chanel bag or any designer bag. So if you believe that line of thought, then actually Chanel gets what they want because they've, if they're that calculating, they've outpriced people during COVID because of that, then they get their new audience. If you're already pivoting towards different brands anyway, absolutely fine. But I don't think it should stop you from still lusting after a Chanel bag because price increases are part of life, inflation's part of life, and, that leads me then to my next option, which is to put up and shut up and continue to support Chanel. And you can support Chanel in, I guess, two ways. You can support them by continuing to buy from their boutiques, or I guess you would tacitly support them by buying pre-loved. Let's talk pre-loved first. In a way, you would be supporting Chanel, but then you wouldn't. So it would be, for many people, a good middle ground because you're getting the item that you want at probably a fairer price than in the boutique, but you're not necessarily supporting Chanel. At the moment, I think the resale market is pretty fair and you can get really good vintage items as well, which I think vintage is going to see a really big resurgence. But if there's something more current that you want and you want to still buy Chanel, then actually buying the item direct from the boutique, you would almost be saying like an FU to Chanel, which in my mind seems more powerful than just pivoting away from them if you actually truly do like Chanel and you're just a bit disappointed in their actions. Because I find if we go again with the line of thought that Chanel is trying to create a new audience, wouldn't it be more powerful to just show absolute indifference? Because they're trying to appeal to an elite that is not affected by price increases. In fact, if I remember correctly, I remember seeing pictures or an article about Chanel opened a boutique in Seoul, I think, or in Beijing or Shanghai, and there was queues of people. In fact, this was even seen in Hermes when they opened their stores. Not to go off tangent, but they made their biggest killing in Q1 or something because they opened their store and on a certain day, and then everyone was going in to buy their stuff. So they broke records, I think, from what I remember. And so I think probably the same with Chanel when they opened their doors. And that's all a point of like proving that you're not affected by it. And wouldn't it be great is if you wanted to show a big FU to Chanel. Oh gosh, I hope I don't get boycotted from Chanel now. If I did have the extra money to play with and that there was something that I really, really liked, I would imagine that this is a really good incentive for me to work hard, progress in my career, because if we keep going up with the price increases, that will just really piss them off. And I think that would be funny in a way. That being said, obviously the quality needs to be good. I expect better service. Oh gosh, I want all the works. All the stars need to be aligned for me to continue supporting Chanel to work. But it could be the ultimate way to be like, hey, I'm not affected. With that being said, will I be buying more Chanel in the future? Who knows? I will definitely be a lot more thoughtful in what I buy, and I may look towards the pre-loved market to look towards more vintage pieces. I think, considering people's grievances with quality at the moment, and obviously with pricing reaching the 5 grand or I guess very soon in the double digits. For me, I guess, yeah, I'd probably think twice about buying a bag just because I want a bag, but more around my future. And if I do have the fortunate ability to have money to play with, to buy a Chanel bag, then yeah, I might do it. It's not like I would buy an item from Chanel just because it's Chanel. I have to really love it first. So they'd need to create a bloody good bag or pair of shoes for me to fork out thousands of pounds for them. But I won't exactly be hate buying or buying other brands just for the sake of it. I equally need to love their stuff as well to be able to part my cash. So it's not like I'm going to be going to Hermes anytime soon to buy stuff just for the sake of closing that gap. So that is everything in this video I wanted to cover, and from the looks of the timer that's going, it's been a long video. So if you're still here, thanks for staying with me. I'm keen to hear your thoughts below. Will you be supporting Chanel in the future? What are your thoughts on the price increases, not just for Chanel, but for other brands? Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in my next one.